out.
Kevin, all excited.
We needed a.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Pin as vehicle.
Well, I know.
Pin vehicle.
Fabulous.
So we removed all the plastics on the front.
Well, Mike and I would first of all like to thank everyone for coming out on this nice evening when we ought to all be at mowing our yards. At least I should be, but you know, I wanted to be here with all of you and Mike. One thing I gotta do before I forget, Tony always asks me to ask how many people are here from each ward. So let's take a survey. Who's here from the 4th Ward? You counting these, Tony? Mm-hmm. Okay. Who's here from the 3rd Ward? Got him? 2nd Ward? 1. 1st Ward? Oh, we're all over here. We got a few that are stragglers, but we're over here. So.
Southwest Ward.
The Southwest Ward, out of town, they don't know where they live Ward. Come on, you brought it up. We have 2. We have 2 out-of-towners here tonight. 3 out-of-towners with the camera. So I guess we're going to start with some information about the Pioneer Spirit Trail going on. Are you ready, Tony? We'll turn it over to you.
Yep, you can, it's on the screen there.
I thought you had a presentation all lined up for us.
Nope, that's you walking through the presentation, so. It's your town hall.
Your turn, Mike.
Okay, so the first slide is clearly the trail over by South Street, by the old, I can't remember the name of what that store used to be.
Grocery store.
So there is progress. And then if you live like along South Baltimore or further here on the south end, you can see where F Street has been, they've cleared out trees and they've already started on the north side of the fairgrounds on the trail part there by F Street. I'm not sure how far around they are this way, but I know there's work going on in different places. And
This just kind of shows how competitive all the bids were for the project. And High Plains Roadworks is a local Hastings contractor.
I believe that's Heartland Construction, and they combined with someone to do that. So Heartland's been doing concrete work around it. We also have a map in here showing the entire trail area of the city. This is a, click again.
Sure. Boom.
There we are. This one shows when the construction on the south part is going to be taking place. It seems like they're jumping around a lot, and in my opinion they are, but I'm not the guy running the project, I'm not the guy running the show. And you'll see where East Street is going to be dug up here shortly, wherever that date is.
May 4th through the 27th, that's phase 2 through 4.
So East Street is the red line,
Orange line.
orange line. Hey, that's pretty good for me.
Did you clean your glasses, Roy?
Okay.
Roger.
Just how do you propose, I see the trail here, but it stops when it starts, it's just heading west. What is the plan for getting maybe a pedestrian deal for kids to get over the tracks? It doesn't look like you've zeroed in on a spot yet.
I don't think that has been. There is a grant that the city has applied for. It's had about 4 different names, and they want another grant. This grant will fund another grant. Gotta love bureaucracy. And then they'll determine where we need access points across the tracks, and how to further connect the south side to the north side. Especially on the southwest part of town, there's only 2, 3 if you count Marion Road, crossing points over the tracks. And that is a big problem.
So they really haven't determined what kind of pass that will be.
Not yet, and that's what part of this grant, what is it, the RAISE grant?
Build
grant.
grant.
Yeah, we had a town hall on it, I think you were there. I think it was at Lincoln School, this was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it went through the cycle. And the city actually scored fairly well, but it wasn't high enough. You remember what the score was, Ember?
It's, well, and it's in the presentation a little later, how well we score.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's towards the back of it, towards the last page.
There's an informational sheet, if you didn't get a chance to grab it on your way in, all about the build grant and the city's application for it.
Wasn't the second part of the second grant though, wasn't that in jeopardy with budget from the state
Well, it's a federal grant.
or federal?
I think it was initially. I know Chad Bunger was worried about that, but it did go, that part went through, but we weren't approved for it, so. That's why the council approved the second application in February for that.
Moving right along, I don't want to keep you all here too late. We have the Lake Hastings issues. Got some water problems, or lack of water. What the city, what we need is some rain. And what we really needed was, I'm gonna say a 4-letter word, snow. Because our lake is down approximately 3 foot, it's causing some issues out there with boats, habitat and everything. And the city's working on multiple proposals. At the council meeting, one person, his proposal was we have rain dances. So I thought it was kind of clever, but I am not going to participate.
Thank you.
Thank you was right.
And if you look back to Monday's council meeting, you can catch up on the discussion if you watch it as to what the options were. And hopefully there'll be some different thoughts on the options after the discussion.
And the big thing is this weekend it looks like rain. So if it rains and we get enough rain, it fixes a lot of our problem. So,
Hey, on the positive side, it'd be a good time to clean up around the shoreline and projections.
Amen.
Of stumps and concrete pieces.
Trash in there.
You know, that, hey, you don't get opportunities like that.
It's called patina.
and that's a good idea, you know. I asked at the council meeting, you know, there's talk about having to dredge the lake, and that's a $6 to $9 million fund, or cost to do that. We don't have the money right now,
Isn't the
so.
NRD a component of that too?
Pardon?
Isn't the NRD in on that too though, or could be?
NRD's questionable because there's 2 NRDs involved, and I believe the lake, the dividing line's pretty much down the middle.
Well, then we'll split the cost.
What's that?
Split the cost.
Yeah.
3, yeah, well, you can get them to do that and we'll be happy. City Hall. Still under construction. We have some nice slides of what's going on in there, what it looks like. I'll just kind of go through those. And it looks like they have pushed back the move-in date once again to late June. And I'm going to hope that the city has a ribbon cutting open house.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do something
For
with it.
that, so everyone can get a chance to walk through there.
Mike, do you know what the cost is for the city hall? Do you know what the cost is?
I think it was between 7 and 9 for City Hall.
Yeah, and I haven't heard a current lately.
I think the last numbers I recall were between 7 and 9, but 7 and 9 million, I don't, because it was contingent upon different things that had to be done. So I'm not sure where that number is right now.
Have you talked to the inspectors about the overkill that was done, even in their opinion?
I'm going to turn that right back there to this gentleman who's in charge of all the inspector.
All we can do is inspect what code requires for that type of building. And everything's
So if it
passed
was
code.
like, so if the architect designs it and he has said that we need to have XXX and but our inspectors even are saying that it's overkill and we're paying as citizens, we're paying that overkill.
That's a decision that was made outside of our parameters
Sure.
as inspectors.
Sure, no, I'm not blaming the inspectors, I'm just saying, who's in charge of that oversight? It's not you.
No.
That'd be the engineering department.
So somebody's in charge of that money that was needlessly spent.
You gotta remember, architects work on a percentage.
That's exactly right, that's my point. So, but if we could have got a light switch from Home Depot for $10, but somebody wanted one that was 50.
Right.
But somebody was in charge of the project that wanted one that was 50.
There's someone in the engineering department, I just don't know who it is.
Okay.
Did we save any of the stuff that we could maybe repurpose for like the district downtown?
The marble,
Well, the
metal-
gold thing that hung out there.
The metal grates and the
Yeah,
marble.
yeah, and stuff like
I
that.
don't think that was.
Yeah,
I think some of the marble
The
has
marble,
been
I think it
saved.
was.
But I think they're gonna put it back on the building, aren't they?
I think it was used inside.
We gotta quit throwing
Yeah.
away some of this stuff, we can use it. Our landfill, next we'll be here complaining we gotta buy a new cell out there, you know? We just can't tear places down and put them in the landfill. It's a great stuff.
Are you ready for your portion? We're getting closer. Amber's gonna do a presentation on zoning for us. Amber. I always call her Amber, I'm sorry about that. The quiet crossings. You wanna do quiet crossings or?
Yeah, the construction is, I'm just gonna read it off here. Construction is complete on Lincoln, Hastings, Denver, Pine, and California Avenues. Complete design and bid for Colorado Avenue in 2026. And I don't know exactly when things are gonna get quiet. I assume after the quiet crossings, and then they have an agreement or whatever with the railroad.
It all has to be complete, all of the construction, and then it needs a review by the Federal Railroad Administration and then approval from the FRA before the quiet crossing goes into effect.
Will it be like the one in Kearney?
No,
It won't go.
no. It should be a true quiet crossing, except when Amtrak is coming in or if the conductors see something on the rail that they need
We won't
to,
hear that annoying noise either, huh?
yeah.
I almost like the trains.
The engineer always has the right to blow the horn whenever they want,
Oh, we got a guy on there.
and they do.
Like the switch engines that keeps running through town at 2 miles an hour, blowing the horn the whole time of the day.
Ask.
Yeah, they have that,
Does the city videotape any of that? Just for-
do you videotape any of that?
I don't know, I don't personally, so I don't know.
Thinking someone's walking in the back
I
door.
don't know.
Question is, how many more crossings are there to be done for it to be complete? It looks like Colorado, and are they doing Elm?
Yeah,
I see Elm Avenue would be a quad gate.
that's what the engineering department is looking at.
What do you mean by that, Tony?
You have 2 gates that cover both roads.
So they wouldn't need, all the other quiet crossings have a median
Right.
because there's so much traffic on Elm Avenue.
Yeah.
They're looking at doing a quad crossing. There's a photo in the presentation. This one is somewhere in Connecticut, I believe, but it's a little more expensive because you have the 4 arms. But then that way, it makes it easier for the traffic to turn around if there is a train.
And the other thing is access to Runza.
Yeah. I don't know.
That one has to be done before quiet zone goes into effect.
Yeah, I believe so. That one, Elm has to be complete, all of them have to be complete before the quiet
Right.
zone. Yeah, so all of them.
So we're gonna have an issue, and there's already an issue with that crossing on Elm and the traffic coming about the roundabout. It's there at this point. There's not too much we can do about it. However, I have seen where if a train is crossing and the lights are down or whatever, there's another signal further down the road that indicates a train is there, so that people can bypass the train if they want to, or go around or whatever. So, because it's already a mess.
Uh-huh.
I just throw that out there.
I live 3 blocks from there.
Pardon?
I live 3 blocks from there.
3
There's probably
blocks.
7 trains that come through a day and stop.
There's some creative,
I called the number even. I got out and took a picture of the little sign,
I don't think it's.
called the number, and they said, no, there's nothing blocking it. But 27 minutes is about top for what they block.
Larry, we can get them for a day and a half. And just leave them there.
That's true.
No,
No, we're already trapped
Yeah.
over there.
maybe 27 and a half minutes is how long it takes you to get through Runza. If you park your car and run over and get a Runza.
I don't know, but it's priority if you're out and about. You gotta get across that track.
Yeah,
Where the
I know
train
what you mean.
comes.
I've turned around in that old grocery store, that Missions place more than once.
Well, the point is if there's a solution, or have we thought about solutions to an issue that's already there? Maybe there is none, I don't know, but, certainly some thought should go into it.
You know, we have like 5 points coming out of driveways and whatever in that little area. It's, you got Runza, 2 of them, you got 2nd Avenue, you got Elm, the other street, traffic, it's crazy.
Adam, do you by chance know how many accidents happened in that area
Probably
offhand?
not. We all live out that way, so we avoid it. Go that way.
What's the address?
What's that? And
Second and Elm.
Second and Elm.
I don't think there's been very many.
Never. Very rare.
The car that hit the Runza.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very rare. Is there a crash there?
Yeah.
Chris, maybe we can put you out there with some flags.
No, I think we all just know how to run it.
That
We
would
get
be-
some out-of-towners in and they think, oh God, we're gonna go now, Come out from this car.
Well, this is a good time to transition into the Southeast project, and that has begun. If you've ever been, we call it the Kicks Curve, they've started there's a lot of utility work going on. I believe the completion date for that project is 2027, 2028, right in there.
Yeah, I think I want to say it's right before Memorial Day, 2028.
2028, so, and there's a lot of variables there, weather, what they find in there, I think it'll be a nice addition. The roundabout, people are still debating. And there's days I get along with the roundabout, the next day I don't, so I'm gonna just see how it goes. Are you gonna do the build grant?
I can talk about some of that, yeah.
Yeah, why don't we let you, if you would, and then, I think the rest is all the zoning.
Yeah.
Okay, we have the build grant next, and I'm gonna turn it over to Amber, Ember. You can hit me if you like.
You want me to grab one of those sheets for you?
And then she's also gonna do zoning.
Well, no.
Mike, do you have anything else to say?
And I can, if anybody needs a single sheet information, it's kind of small in the PowerPoint, but I have some of these here.
Mike, did you want to say anything before we turn it over to Ember?
No, go ahead.
It's all yours.
Hello everyone, I'm Ember Batslon, I'm the city planner for the city. So I'll start off with telling you a little bit about the build grant. So as Steve mentioned previously, we first applied for the build grant in 2025. Unfortunately, did not make that round. We came close, but didn't make the final cut in getting funding. So then this February, we submitted another application for the build grant and are hoping to hear back about that in June of this year. So if you're not familiar with it, the build grant encompasses the entirety of South Hastings and is intended to look at infrastructure issues in the sense of, we all know the railroad track splits the community from north to south. Burlington Avenue splits it east-west. And so that grant is intended to look at how to better connect those parts of town. And so if we were to receive the funding for this grant cycle, at that point in time, we'll have public meetings and work with the consultants to identify where those connections should be located and what types of connections those are. So whether that's a pedestrian overpass, vehicular overpass, whether it's different kinds of lights, sidewalks, lights at intersections for pedestrians, that'll be looking at all types of different forms of transportation. So pedestrian, bikes, vehicles, how can we better connect those parts of town? Then once that study has been completed and locations have been identified, the next step would be to apply for another build grant. That grant would then be used to actually build the project. So if all goes well and we get the grant this year, we're probably looking at a 2028 timeframe to have a completed study in place, and then probably around 2029 applying for the next grant to hopefully start construction on the project. So that's the basics on the build grant, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them at least.
Have we received a build grant before?
Not to my knowledge, no. Any other questions?
Is there a charge for this study again?
So the study would be funded by that build grant. I can't quite remember how much we applied for exactly, but
It's $980,000.
980,000, there you go.
I think the thought was coming in under $1 million would make the city a little more attractive in the application process.
Yeah.
Can we fix our roads with that amount of money?
Well, this grant application was intended to focus on connections. So if there are certain intersections where there might not currently be pedestrian lights, then that could be something that it would fund. We would just have to look at how does it relate to connecting the community, so potentially.
Well, we need our roads fixed and our sidewalks fixed first before any of this other stuff is spent. I mean, that's a lot of money just for a study.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how exactly that breaks down. It's been a while since I've looked at that application. But those were the numbers that we ended up thinking were reasonable for that grant application. And the engineers, Lee and Steve.
That's other things besides the study.
Well,
The study's that expensive.
I'm not sure if the study itself is that expensive, but it would include consultants, public engagement that we asked the consultant to come to. So Lee and Steve, city engineer, would have a better explanation of the budget.
Steve Rayleigh, not me.
Yes, of the budget portion of that, so
Sounds
if you
like
have
an awful lot of money
questions.
for a pavers.
What's that involve some engineering?
It would.
From the city
Yeah.
here to that?
Yeah, for the grants, that's a part of it, thanks for reminding me. It would likely include like either 25 or 50% design for, say, a pedestrian overpass or street overpass. You have a question?
Yes, is any of this study or any of the stuff that we're applying for, is it anything that a Steve person, is anything he can do, or anything that people on our staff can do? As city employees or our city experts?
So in our grant application, we did say that city staff would assist the consultants. But since this is such a big project and so much time and effort that would need to go into it, that's part of why consultants would likely be hired to do most of the work. Any other questions? If not, I think we can move into the zoning. Okay, so in terms of the zoning, if you were at the city council meeting, this is the same presentation as we did then, so I apologize for a repeat of the presentation. If not, it's all new. So I'll start off with what we've been working on is on our Engage Hastings website. That includes a map of the proposed zoning changes. There's also a couple of copies of the proposed zoning regulations that I printed out and that are on that table. Some of you may have taken them. There's 4 or 5 copies, so please share. We do also have a public meeting on May 14th in which this will be more of a conversation between Kevin and I and the public. We do have slides with that. We'll be able to go in a lot more depth. I didn't want to take over their entire meeting tonight. So if you're interested, if you know others that are interested, we will have that meeting on the 14th. We're also happy to have one-on-one meetings with anyone that has questions on what we're proposing, how we've gotten to where we're at right now, that type of stuff.
Where's it at on the 14th?
On the 14th, it's at the library at, what was it, 5 p.m.?
It's in the
There's a flyer right over there as well. I have the details on it.
pizza one, Steve. Or Mike, sorry.
Pizza one, May 14th, 5 to 6:30 at the library, meeting room A. And it'll be this paper.
Yep. So then in terms of this presentation, I'll start a little bit with the background of what we've done so far and how we've gotten to where we're at now. So we started out with doing some research on applicable regulations like state statute. We picked comparable communities of Grand Island, Kearney, Fremont, Norfolk, Missoula, Montana, and Salina, Kansas. We also made sure to align what we're proposing with our comprehensive plan that was adopted last year, if you may remember. And then we did a neighborhood character survey at the end of last year. And I'll go into a little more depth on those in the next couple of slides.
How did we pick, well, how did you pick these cities as being comparable? Because like Norfolk's the closest in population to Hastings, and they're still close to 10,000 more.
Yeah, so these comparable communities were picked when I was still working under Chad as the previous Development Services Director. So Grand Island and Kearney were picked based on location. They're also part of the Tri-Cities area. So we looked at how our regulations compare to theirs. Then Fremont and Hastings are Fremont and Norfolk are most comparable in terms of population. So we looked at the 2020 census, which is the last official population count for all of the communities, and 2020 census.
6 years. Okay, 6 years ago.
Yeah. And Fremont was the one that was directly above us in terms of population, closest population. Norfolk was the one directly below us in terms of population, so they had the most similar population count. Then in terms of Missoula, Montana, and Salina, Kansas, we felt it would be pertinent to look at other states as well. So we had our 4 Nebraska examples of regulations, then we picked 2 out-of-state examples to see. These are both Midwestern communities. They're slightly larger than Hastings is, but we felt it would be good to look at what other states are doing as well. So that's sort of how we ended up on these 6.
So there was no demographics about the type of population in these cities?
We did look at the population characteristics in other communities, Fremont, Norfolk. I think from what we it's been a while since I looked at that, but from what I remember, Fremont had a similar sized Hispanic community as we do here, so we did look at some of those details as well.
So like in age populations? I mean,
Throughout?
And no offense to some of you, but, you know, Good Samaritan
Yeah.
is a big part of our population.
And throughout the state,
And
they have
these
those
places-
same demographic changes throughout Fremont, Norfolk, other communities. I don't know the
But do they
specifics,
play
but
such a big part of their population of their city?
that I'd have to look back at again. It's been a while since I've looked at those demographics. Okay, so then in terms of state statutes, the two big ones we looked at was the Affordable Housing Report and the Fair Housing Act. So the Affordable Housing Report is a required report that we as the city submit to the Urban Affairs Committee of the legislature every 2 years, which is intended to identify which regulations we have in our zoning code either support affordable housing, as well as that affordable housing report had a requirement to adopt an affordable housing action plan. So Hastings adopted the Affordable Housing Action Plan in 2023, and in that plan, it addresses a path for the future in terms of potential recommendations for zoning updates to allow for affordable housing and how we can promote that in our community. Then in terms of the Fair Housing Act, it prohibits discrimination in housing, financing, and rentals based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability. So with these regulations that we're proposing, we're making sure that we comply with the Fair Housing Act as well as other state statutes as they're applicable. Then the next big portion of it is the comprehensive plan. So as you may remember, we adopted a comprehensive plan in around May or June of last year. If you don't know, a comprehensive plan is the community's vision for the future growth of the city, and it looks at a 20-year time frame. So at the time, we worked with the consultants to develop this comprehensive plan. And so we looked at what is the existing density throughout our community. And density is measured in a number of units per acre measurement. So the image on the left is 2nd Avenue, just to the east of the golf course. Okay, 1st Avenue, sorry, my mistake. And generally in that area, as you can see from that map, the number of dwelling units per acre is less than 1. So that means that generally in that area you have large lots. Then in the comprehensive plan, that area was shown as residential estates, which the consultants defined as having, as it should have for over the next 20 years, a density of between 0.33 and 2 dwelling units per acre. So that is a slight increase over what we have now, but this is looking at a 20-year time frame. Then the image on the right is the Lake Hastings neighborhoods. And so that currently has a density of between 0.6 to a high of 5 dwelling units per acre. And the consultants in the comprehensive plan had that as low density residential, which would be up to 7 dwelling units per acre. So once again, that goes from 5 dwelling units per acre up to 7. Then the next slide, this is the Hastings College neighborhood, which currently has between 1.27 and 11.58 dwelling units per acre. And the consultants have identified this one as starting where the low density leaves off, so at 7 dwelling units per acre, up to 15 dwelling units per acre. So once again, that allows for a little bit of growth while mostly maintaining the density we have in that part of town. And then,
I have a question.
yes.
Are you saying that they're trying to squeeze more things into these acres? I
So-
mean, people might have bought
Yeah.
where they are, because they didn't have a lot of neighbors, but we're trying to push more neighbors in there.
So this is over the next 20 years, we're looking at the growth of the community. Not all the growth is going to be outwards. There's certain lots throughout the community that are currently vacant. There's other lots that could potentially support more development, and so what we're looking at is being able to support development that may happen. Generally, you won't see much change in established neighborhoods like that because all the lots are already built out. So unless someone tears down a home and builds a new one, you're not going to see any changes.
But you did say that if they had like a large enough lot, they could put something in their backyard, one of those little tiny houses.
Yeah, an accessory
And,
dwelling unit.
I still have,
Okay.
I think the question. So you got all that around, how's that affected by EMS and fire department? If that house is at the back of one of those big lots, no alley, now we got a fire hazard, safety concerns. How, is that gonna be written into this comprehensive plan for fire care and?
So this wouldn't be the comprehensive plan, these are the zoning regulations.
Well,
And
that's what I'm getting at, your zoning, are you gonna zone to where you're just creating another problem in the future for our fire departments?
we are
My
looking
take on
at,
the zoning is that it's not gonna affect Lake Hastings, it's not gonna affect Lockland. It's gonna affect you on the south side of town that have smaller lots that are only worth X amount of dollars, but if they can build more units on them, now they're worth more money.
that depends
So,
on the size of the
The
lot.
middle class and the lower class is who these zoning changes will affect the most.
Will that require replatting that?
It's called the underused property.
They are going to
It-
rezone.
Jay's pushing it real hard
To
to.
replat properties of the zone.
If properties are large enough, they could be replatted to then allow for multiple lots. If a lot is not large enough, they would not be able to put more units on it.
Well, that's what they did by Carter Park, the, whatever, Housing for Humanity, put one house right on top of the other.
You can spit from one to the other and hit it.
And I wanted to build a house in my lot, by my little house, and they wouldn't let me, because there wasn't enough room between them. Now they're trying to squeeze everybody in. That's,
There are minimum requirements in terms of distances between houses, minimum lot sizes. So a lot of these properties, they're already at the minimum. You would not be able to build another unit on
well,
it.
how can those two houses, those Housing for Humanity, be right on top of each other? How is that?
Because they zoned that for high density, and then that allowed them to be closer together.
So
Whereas
that's
now-
what they're trying to do, the whole south side.
Exactly.
No, for the whole south, most of the south side would be rezoned into the medium density residential district.
Well,
That would
what
not
about the
allow
area
for
that's
high density.
light industrial that they're gonna try to change to residential?
Which,
Over by the tower, by Brickyard Park.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's getting turned into residential.
High density.
High density.
They just did it down all of Second Street too, 147 pieces of property.
yeah, that property near Brickyard Park is currently zoned as industrial. In the comprehensive plan, that shows it as high-density residential. Due to it's along a railroad track, it is bordering other residential properties, and therefore the consultants felt that high-density residential would sort of be a buffer between the railroad tracks, the other uses, and those medium-density residential uses in that area.
Next question, where are you gonna get the people to fill all these houses? From 2010 to 2020, we grew 245 people. And we've actually lost 21 family homes and households that went up 27. There's not a whole lot of people for all these new properties we're building.
They're
So
just relocating people, they're moving from Good Sam to on Franklin, they're
that's,
just relocating.
that's part of it, is people within the community would have housing options to potentially move
That's
from
not
one
bringing
location
people
to
in.
another.
So
There's also about a third of the workforce commutes from Grand Island to Hastings on a
They
daily
like living in
basis.
Grand Island.
Some of those people may want to move to
that doesn't
Hastings.
answer my question at all. We've got all these apartment buildings for 245 people. Where are we getting these 245 people and all these other houses we filled? We only grew that much in 10 years. Well, we're only 10 more years out. We're gonna grow another 300 people.
The current
You wanna
apartment,
move people out that are in 4-bedroom houses into single houses, because I've seen that already happen. And who's gonna pay the bill for all this stuff? You've only got a quarter of the tax population in Hastings actually paying taxes. The retiree pays the smaller amount than what they did when he was working. And anybody on assistance don't pay very much.
so in terms of the
So
existing
who's paying for all
developments,
this?
in terms of the existing development that's coming in, those apartments, for example, at Elm and 26th Street, those are all filling up. So part of that is determined by the market. Developers would not build a property if they didn't think they could either sell it or rent it out.
It's not true when we're paying for half of the property that they're developing. Taxpayers are paying for grant money.
Tax increment financing does not come from the community, that comes from the increase in taxes on that property itself.
But that
So,
don't happen for 15 years.
well, for 15 years, they're still paying a base tax
Yeah,
amount.
on whatever it was before they built it.
Yes, the increase in
So that
taxes
doesn't
is
pay for the
captured.
difference in the property.
The increase in taxes is captured for each of those 15 years, and that increase is what pays for the project.
And doesn't a lot of times they surpass the 15 years, it goes through the process quicker than that?
Yeah, so oftentimes the CRA looked at the details, and it's generally around like the 7 to 10 year mark, that's when they pay off these projects. So that's after that project is paid off through that increase in taxes, then it entirely comes back
The
onto the
first thing
tax
they do
roll.
though is they blight the property, so when they reassess it, when it's been blighted, it gets
They are
less
right
value.
there. Ask them.
I'm asking her.
But they voted for her to do her job.
She's up here to
And
answer
you're
questions.
asking her why she's doing what they voted for her to do.
That's
Ask
her-
them.
That's her job. So, and when you get grant money for everything, we're still paying that, that's not free money. That's why, I'm just trying to tell you, I mean, it's in the newspaper saying we're not doing a very good job. The auditor said that. And if you'd like to read it to the crowd, I brought it with me.
I'm not sure what those details are. If you have more questions, we'd be happy to sit down with you and answer it and everything in more detail.
One last question for me, but whoever did this study that said, you know, we could put more people here, more people there, did they look into the reasons why those places weren't already developed? Because, like, you're wanting to change our property into a high density. Well, the city's already pulled a lift station out, so there's no way you can put in plumbing or sewer in that area. Why now, other than changing from light industrial to high density? It seems to me that it's a means of being able to raise some tax money. I know the county does that, but you're changing it and it's gonna filter back into the city. So again, why, apparently they didn't look into why that land is vacant already.
I'm not sure what the consultants looked at in terms of that property specifically and showing that as high density. The thing with a comprehensive plan, the reason we do that first is the last one was done in 2009. A lot has changed since 2009, and so that's why we've done a new comprehensive plan. So at this point in time, the comprehensive plan is the vision for the future of how the community should grow. And that was one of the areas that was identified as residential. So we're trying to align with that in our zoning regulations as well.
The only thing there, with it, you know, we got a residential house to the west of us. We've got residential houses to the east of us. Property zone residential, R1, basically. And now they're all gonna be rezoned to R3. And the entire stretch there. So, I mean, I don't understand why.
So
Why
that
are we free when
rezoning
you
over
already have
there, do we
R1?
have to be advised of that before it can pass? I mean, do we have to stay in that?
So with a rezoning, such as what we're doing here, rezoning the entire community, we don't send out notices to each individual property owner. That's written in state statute where it's typically the 300 feet around a property that's rezoned. in this case, since we're rezoning the entire city, it does have notices about when it's going to planning commission, when it's going to council, and then planning commission and council, there's opportunities for people to speak.
And where's that advertised at, so you can see it?
At this point in time, it's not advertised yet, since we're still doing the public meetings, trying to gather feedback, finish up our proposed regulations. But once we do put out the notices, they'll be in the Tribune under legal notices,
And if you don't
as
get paper?
as well as, there will be, what is it? Legal notice in the paper. And on our website, we'll put the dates of when those meetings will be.
And what if you don't happen to be watching those websites every single day? I mean, how,
And we share the agendas for the meetings on the city Facebook, city social media.
You can sign up to get emails too.
Yeah, so what he said, in case you didn't hear, is we do share the agenda for the meetings on the city's Facebook page, and other social media sites as well, so it'll be in those locations.
Kevin, what was the timeline that you had kind of threw out Monday night?
We're
I mean,
hoping-
you said this is like, I
We're
don't want
about-
to say a year, but.
Well, we're about a third of the way through of trying to get all these regulations to work together, so they're flowing from one edge to the other. Right now, our regulations don't match each other in the code. So we're going through every line item to match it with state statutes, with other communities, what we want here. That's why we've had so many meetings, to get the input from the public. So we're about a third of the way through of going through the code and matching everything up. So we're hoping by October, November to have a finished product to present to Planning Commission and to City Council. Now, the Planning Commission will have a public hearing because it is a zoning change and other things that are going to be in this package. And then it goes to City Council for 3 readings. So the public has 3 readings to voice their opinions, or they can come to the public meetings and voice their opinions or concerns that they have with the zoning changes. Nothing's set in stone. We're just trying to match what our comprehensive plan says with what our ordinances are saying. And they don't jive together. If you look at our zoning map, we've got spot zoning all over the place. We've got uses that don't align with what's in those districts. So we're trying to align everything so everything flows from the way it's supposed to be. And it's just a very long process, and sometimes we have to do things we don't like to do. But we're looking at the big picture and the small picture, to make sure all the small pictures line up, to make sure the big picture is what this community wants. So that's why, like I said, I expressed my concerns. I want the public to talk to us and tell us what you want. Because this goes into what we consider of changing the zoning, what's best for the city of Hastings. This is the city of Hastings. There's 25,000 people there. We need to hear from them so we can take that data and match it to what we're trying to accomplish.
But isn't this a problem that the city council created by allowing those places to build and giving these variances of different activities into zones that aren't?
I'm not gonna jump on the history train.
Well, I'm not saying, but I mean, why it, at that time when these things were done, they were done for individuals.
And we're trying to align all the ordinances to be consistent, so we're being flexible enough to allow certain uses, so we don't have that spot zoning or allowing individuals to get away with what they want to get away with. We're trying to design codes that represents you as the citizen, but yet being flexible enough that if you want to do something that's not quite there, we can look at it and analyze it and see what's best for the city.
Well, that's where you get your spot zoning, is if you start looking at each individually, you can't do that, and that's how you got those spot zonings for certain individuals.
In certain circumstances,
So
yes. That's why we're going back to our comprehensive plan that looks at the picture at 30,000 feet. That comprehensive plan looks at the big picture to allow for the districts to align like that. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of little pictures inside that big picture.
This is a lot of work that you guys have done, and you've done really good. The only thing I just wish that people understood what it means to be rezoned from R1 to R3. I think if people understood that part of it, it would be better for everyone
Yes,
involved.
and like I said, that's why we've changed some slides up, that we'd be more than happy to do the density slides, or go into more definition of what an R1 is and what an R3, because we've changed the definition of what an R1 is now.
But people don't understand that they're just automatically, when this comprehensive plan goes into place, they are going to be changed from R1 to R3.
Right. In
And
some
they need to know
areas,
what that
yes.
means for them.
And we're happy to do that.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how that'll affect everything or the tax rates, but it sounds like you've got a lot of ground that is going from, into an R3 from a light industrial. I have a property that's light industrial, is gonna go to R3. So how close I can build to my lot lines is gonna change. So I'm gonna lose buildable footage on that property. So will my taxes go down? Because I'll be in a different, because I'll have less buildable footage on my property? And will that happen to all
I'm
properties?
not
that-
sure how taxes are affected by these changes. That would have to be a conversation with the county assessor.
Shouldn't it go down though if I have less buildable footage after
Well,
the
that's where
rezoning?
your R3 comes into effect. It's not so much as you're building out, they want you to build up.
Well, you can't build a.
Well,
in
you
some
can
areas.
build up because you're still inside your little zone. So you can add a second layer or a third layer, and that gives you the additional R3.
If you're building residential, but if you're building commercial, you
But
can't-
if you're
you
in
can't-
an R3, you can't build commercial.
Well, if you're already light industrial, I think we're on the same side. I don't know why we are.
Yeah, no.
But if you're light industrial,
I am.
I don't want to be zoned anything residential because then I have
Exactly.
to stay farther from the lot lines. I have less buildable footage. And I think if I go down and protest my taxes, that's one of the points I'm going to use.
Yeah.
I mean, I have less buildable footage because of the way they zoned me without my permission. And everything I did to try and stop it didn't work. I can't tell anybody because they're still gonna go by the lines that they hired somebody to draw.
And now you can't add on to your building either because you're not.
I'm not conforming.
We'd have to look at which property you have.
You
I
know,
obviously,
but it's gonna be a lot of places that are
It's not an individual.
light industrial.
And that's where you
Your
get
people
your
you need to
problem.
answer are over
Well,
there.
that's
They
why I'm
voted
saying
7 to
allow them
nothing
so
to
that they
approve the
can-
comprehensive
so that they
plan
can
the way
hear
it's
it.
said.
I would be happy to
It's the truth.
protest my taxes.
They
if I had
approved it,
less
everybody
buildable
approved
footage.
it.
Sean, you were on the council first, remember, buddy?
The property that I own used to be Bob Pinkowski Auto Sales, and now it's gonna be, they're talking about zoning it residential. So,
There
We
are
did
proposed
look
changes
at-
to the industrial districts also.
we
Got
did
your
look
buildable
at
footage.
each of the individual properties as well when we developed our zoning map. However, if we were to zone every property based on its existing use, we'd be in the same place we're at right now. With zones here, zones there, they're all tiny little,
Pockets of zoning.
exactly, pockets of zoning. So that's why we're aligning it with the comprehensive plan. We looked at what does the comprehensive plan show it. We looked at what's the current zoning of the property, what's the current use of the property. Then we input all three of those into the computer to then spit out a proposed zoning district. Then once we did that, Kevin and I went back through and went through every single property in town to determine what the computer spit out make sense. And that's how we ended up with the proposed zoning map we have now. So we did look at existing properties, but that's not, existing uses, but that's not the only thing we can look at.
Hey, can I ask Kevin something? I live on E and Emerson where they're doing the trail and everything, and they very nicely gave me a fire hydrant in my yard now. So,
You're welcome.
but in the street, they put like 3 water heads or something. So are they looking ahead for something?
They probably worked on the main, the water main. If you got a new hydrant, they probably replaced the hydrant or put it in a location because the trail went through there, so they just
But
relocated.
they put 3 different things
They're
on it.
water
Why do
valves.
they need all that when it's,
Probably their valves to control the water mains.
I think they were in pretty rough shape
Yeah.
right before that.
so they're not planning ahead for the rezoning to get
No,
houses
that
on
has
that
nothing,
side of the
that has nothing to do with the rezoning. All that is they assessed the water lines in that area and found that they were probably aged out. So the water department went in and put new valves in there along with the new fire hydrant.
But there's only, I'm the only house right in that area,
You
so.
deserve as much respect as everybody else, and that's probably why they replaced the fire hydrant. And they put the valves in to help control the water. If you have one line that services 500 homes, then you have to turn that one valve off, 500 homes go out. So they put multiple valves on so they can control that flow of water, so we don't turn 500 homes. We only
So
turn
when
20
they just
homes.
fixed it at the opposite end of the block, they only put 1 in there.
That I don't know, I'm sure there was a very good reason why they did that.
So I had a question. You said that the proposed zone changes map is available in your office?
Yes, the map is available on Engage Hastings, as well as we can show it to you in our office, as well as the zoning regulations, same thing. We can show you what we have so far.
Okay, and I just wanted to put a comprehensive plan has already been adopted.
Yes, that was adopted last year, May or June timeframe.
March 25th.
Okay, March 25th.
This one, they
Of the law.
voted 7-0 to approve the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Just to make something clear, I think I understand it, geometrics in a business on a commercial lot or
Light
light
industrial.
industrial, and it's gonna be rezoned as R3. He don't have to change it in his business, he can leave it there and do what he wants for as long as he wants.
Exactly, so businesses and structures that are already in those districts, we're not going to require you to tear it down or anything. Those would be considered non-conforming structures. They can stay in the location they're at. You can't expand upon the non-conformity, so if it's built on the lot line, now the setback is 5 feet, you would then have to build on 5 feet away from the lot line. If it gets destroyed by over 50% of its value due to fire, weather, whatever, then it would have to come into conformity with these zoning regulations.
So if you had a business there, industrial, light industrial, and had a fire, 49% left, you'd have to completely tear it down.
Yes.
Put a house up. And put a house up, yeah.
At that point in time, it would have to come into
An
conformity.
apartment, there's no grandfather rights to the next owner, so his property value's gonna be hit because there's no grandfather rights on that
That
property.
is the grandfathering, that non-conforming
The next
structure.
owner don't get grandfather rights.
The non-conforming structures and the rights allowed with that for the property to remain, that is what's typically called grandfathering.
So if the property
I've
is
never seen
sold,
one change with a deed, especially if you've changed the property zone.
if the property is sold, then does that non-conforming building still get to stand?
Yes, it doesn't matter who owns the property, it's only if that property were to be destroyed to past 50% of its value. That's the only time it would have to come into conformity. But if you sell the property, if your grandkids inherit the property, whoever, whatever happens, that's still, the non-conforming structure stays.
Just to be fair to everybody in the room, I'm gonna interject here. Kevin and Ember are here to hear you. They're not here to jam something down your throat, if that's the way, I mean, the way I'm taking it, they're looking to hear from people. And the last meetings didn't have that great of attendance. So if I was just to look at it from the outside, I mean, I know everybody's busy, I'm busy too. But if nobody comes to the meeting to tell you what they want, and you write up a plan, that's what you're gonna get. So I would just suggest if you have questions, to get in touch with them because they are available to get in touch with. Get in touch with any of your council members. You can send them an email, you can call them. and we can get that information to them so that your questions can go to them. Reach out and let people know what you're feeling, but also the facts of the situation. I'm not picking a side here, I'm just saying, this is not, let people know what you're thinking. This is your opportunity, and that's why they're here tonight, is to hear you, and they can take all this back to their drawing board. So if you've got thoughts, definitely share it with them, but it's not like it's, like they've made all these decisions and that's exactly how it's gonna be, to my understanding.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
that's correct. It's not set in stone at this point in time. We do have that public meeting that I mentioned, May 14th. Anyone's welcome to that meeting. We'd also be happy to sit down with anyone one-on-one if you have specific questions about your individual property or what impacts this may have on you. Like he said, there are many different things that we're looking into, and this is just a proposed draft, the first draft at this point.
Okay, but the comprehensive plan does go on through until it's completed, right?
The
So-
comprehensive plan has been adopted, and that is a 20-year vision. It's
Okay.
not intended to sit there for 20 years. The intent with the comprehensive plan is to come back and look at it every 5 years to ensure that what the comprehensive plan envisioned in terms of growth, where we're going to grow, that that's actually the direction we're growing. If that's not the case, then we'd come back and revise the comprehensive plan, which at that point would then have public engagement, planning commission, and council. So this is a vision for 20 years, but it's not intended to stay exactly the same for 20 years.
In the past, though, the comprehensive plans have basically just been a drawing, right? Nobody's ever acted on the comprehensive plan the way that you have been trying to.
Usually, no, the comprehensive plan gets done about every 20 years. Consultants are hired at that point in time to do the comprehensive plan, and then typically, once the comprehensive plan is adopted, then either the consultants or the city staff come back in and revise the zoning regulations, which is what we're doing now, to align with the adopted comprehensive plan.
And the last comprehensive plan was in 2009.
Yes, that's correct.
Are they zoning anything industrial and trying to get industry in here?
There
Or
are certain.
Where are those people supposed to go if we would get some?
Yes, there are certain parts of town that would either remain or be zoned industrial, because we're not just looking at the city limits itself, we're looking at the 2-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction as well. So that's 2 miles around the city limits that the city of Hastings controls the zoning in as well. The comprehensive plan also identified what parts of that 2 mile should remain agriculture, be developed as residential, industrial, commercial, and that's also in that map in our comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan is available on the city's website under the reports and studies section. Okay, so then, in terms of the background as to how we got to this point in our draft, these comparable communities, we did look at what their zoning is, what types of densities they allow in their various districts, and compared that to what our current code allows, as well as our proposed residential districts. So the residential estates are your large lot residential districts. We're proposing between 0.33 and 2 dwelling units per acre to align with our comprehensive plan. Currently, we allow between 0.7 and 2.2 dwelling units per acre. So that district is basically not going to change. In the other communities, it also ranged from about 0.05 up to 3.6 dwelling units per acre. So we're right in line with what these other comparable communities have for their large lot residential districts. Then the next one is the R1 low density residential districts. The comprehensive plan and our proposed zoning has 2 to 7 dwelling units per acre. Our current code has 6.2 as the maximum number of dwelling units. So once again, it's not much change to that. And in the other communities, it ranges from 0.33 all the way up to 14.5. So we're sort of on the lower end in comparison to these other communities throughout Nebraska and the out-of-state communities. Then the R2 district is our medium density residential district, and in our comp plan and proposed zoning, we show that as 7 to 15 dwelling units per acre. Currently, we're at 7.3 to 12.4, so slightly higher, but still generally in line with what we currently have. And that is between 1 and 21.8 dwelling units per acre in other communities. So we're sort of right in the middle with that one as well. Then the R3 is the high density residential district. The comprehensive plan identifies that as 15 or more dwelling units per acre, and that's what we have in our proposed zoning. Currently, we allow between 9.7 and 27.2 dwelling units per acre. So once again, we're right in that same range. In other communities, they allow between 4.3 and 87.1 dwelling units per acre. So once again, we're sort of on the low end of what we allow in our high-density residential districts. And then the R4 district is not a district we currently have, but we're proposing to have a residential district specific to the existing manufactured home parks we have throughout the community, as well as potentially tiny home development. And that would also be at a density of about 15 or more dwelling units per acre. And in the communities that did have similar districts, they range from about 2.7 as a low all the way up to 43.6 dwelling units per acre. So we're sort of on the lower end of that one as well in terms of the density. Any questions on that?
I still haven't heard how you plan on filling all this stuff. Demographics are going lower, not higher.
Well,
Throughout the whole country.
Well, our jobs aren't to fill it. Our job's to allow
To build.
our zone, our jobs are to allow the zoning to allow for people to come in and develop or redevelop these areas. Our jobs aren't to fill those spaces, but make it an opportunity for somebody
For
to
them
do.
to answer.
Whether they build these types of units or not is not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is meeting those state requirements that require us to look at affordable housing.
We're definitely doing the groundwork for that to be done, though.
Yeah, and so one of those
Not we're
ways,
getting a lot of money for nothing.
one of those ways we're looking at it is different types of housing units. We have a lot of single-family housing throughout the community. We've had a lot of apartment buildings being built recently. But the one thing that at the state level they often see as missing middle is anywhere from a 2-unit duplex to about like a 6-unit. Is those smaller multifamily structures, and we don't have a lot of those. A lot of the ones we do have are in our older established neighborhoods, and they don't currently meet our zoning codes. So that's one of the things we're trying to revise in these zoning regulations, is to allow for that type of development. On certain lots, not all lots will qualify for it. You'd still need to meet minimum setback requirements, minimum lot sizes, height requirements, those types of things.
That doesn't say we're gonna get the people to fill it, if we build it.
What is affordable?
It's a good question. The state
So-
of Nebraska does not have a definition of affordable.
Affordable housing is,
$1,200 a month sounds like.
affordable housing is
Yeah.
defined as 30% of a person's income is spent on housing costs. So that depends on how much one makes. That 30% is different for a fast food worker versus a CEO. But that's what they're looking at, is that 30% of your income is considered affordable housing.
So they're saying like those houses, those places back behind by Menards and over there, that would be, since those go for like $2,200 a month, your affordable housing, you would have to be making like $74,000 a year. I don't make anywhere shit. The two of us don't make that.
Mr.
And
Hartman,
that's-
what do you pay your hourly wage people, if I can ask?
Excuse me?
What do you pay your hourly wages the place you run? Could they afford a $22,000 a month?
2,200.
It depends
2,200.
on age and experience.
Okay.
And that's the struggle with that,
About $24 an hour.
that's the struggle with the state and the
How's that
federal
roll?
government's
Thank you very much.
definition,
Well,
because that
if we're not paying them enough
30%
money
is
to live in
different
these
based on
places,
your
affordability
income. There's
don't
no
count.
real
Councilman Huntley
good
owns
definition in
property.
that.
I understand that, but
Oh, I
See,
know.
it's considered affordable.
we go
I
back
know what it
to,
is. He's pretty much,
Well,
he's pretty much average with
what I'm
everybody
getting
else.
at.
Is it affordable?
These other
Depends on
cities
your
that
job.
you have
That's what you
picked,
told me.
if you go there, you can obviously see it's a young population. They have a lot of manufacturing going up in those cities. And, I mean, you just have to look at the schools, because those are all Class A schools, and we're B, so you should know that we're in a lower demographic. And I just don't see where the people in Hastings, we may get the stuff here, you're doing what we need, but until we get the construction, the manufacturers or the jobs, that's all wasted. And you gotta have a happy balance, and it seems like we're trying to push too far in one direction.
If you build it, they will come.
Well, you can say that, but that's only maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you wanna come 50 miles or 30 miles from the interstate to have a trucking company when you could be right off the interstate and up there in Grand Island where they're already there?
Well, Hastings used to have great railroads, and we was one of the biggest states, biggest cities in the state until the road changed.
It's
And
gotta
Hastings
be
changed.
an equal thing for the housing
Yes.
as for business. You can't go one way or the other.
And before I forget it, you're doing a fabulous job. I don't get compliments like that.
But like I said, we're not trying to be anybody else. We're not trying to be Grand Island. We're not trying to be Kearney. They all have their own characteristics. And they've worked hard over the years to maintain those characteristics. All we're trying to do is align those characteristics with our comprehensive plan and have our existing zoning match that comprehensive plan. Now, is that a perfect system? No. But with the tools that we have at our disposal and our public input, we're trying to find the right path for everybody. Is everybody gonna benefit? Maybe, maybe not. Like I said, none of this is set in stone. We're working on a living document that may change or may not change. We have to do our best job, and I believe Ember and I, in our department, our whole department, is trying to do the best job we can for the city of Hastings, period.
Yeah. Does the zoning, do those, I don't know what you call them, those train storage things that everybody's putting in their yards? Does zoning have anything to do with those? I mean, people can slap those down.
Like the steel Connex containers.
Yeah, the Connex containers are not allowed in residential districts, okay?
Really?
They're only allowed in
Well, they're
commercial
on the
and
south side
industrial.
all over the place.
Well, they were probably put there before the zoning laws changed. Once again, if they're allowed at the
The zoning
time,
laws change.
they're allowed to continue until they not use it anymore. Then it becomes a non-conforming use.
These were only put here this, like, past year or two. Zoning changed since then?
No, they're probably there illegally. So we can go around and look at all the connexes on residential properties, and we'll be happy to send a letter out. Then we become very popular again, because we're enforcing an ordinance that the council passed. And there's a reason. You don't want connexes in your residential neighborhood.
Well, I just wondered if the zoning had any, you know, if they had any authority over that.
That's been on the books for many years, to not allow for connexes in residential districts.
Okay, then this next part of the research we did was we had a neighborhood character survey at the end of last year. Unfortunately, we did not get as much input on that survey as we had hoped, hence why we're doing more community meetings. We had 2 at the end of March, we have the one coming up in May as well, and as we finish drafting sections, there will be more opportunities to provide input. However, with that survey, the respondents we did get did show support for having various types of housing throughout the community. The percentages of that is on there as well. Then in terms of the zoning code rewrite that we're working on, the purpose of what we're doing this is to address these building blocks of planning, addressing legal issues that we currently have in our code. There's also issues with consistency with those state statutes, the comprehensive plan, but also consistency within the code. There are certain sections of the code that reference other sections and then the references don't exist. We're trying to clean up all those types of issues that we currently have in our code, as well as clarity. I don't know how familiar you are with the zoning code or reading ordinances, but oftentimes they have legal jargon that no one really understands. And what we're trying to do with this code is write it, include images in such a way that anyone could go in and understand what it's trying to regulate. So then I sort of already talked about some of these proposed districts we had. This just shows how those align with the current districts that we have. So we have an agricultural district right now. We're planning on maintaining that, having an A1 agriculture district. R1 will also be maintained. It will be a low-density residential district. We are making some changes into the density, like I had mentioned, the types of units allowed, but generally low density is low density. Then R1A and R1S, they're the large lot residential districts on the edge of town, as well as the suburban acreage residential. And those are being combined into the residential estates district, which that was what our comprehensive plan had. All of those areas as was residential estates. They're both large lot districts and would be combined into one. Then the R2 mixed density neighborhood district would be the medium density residential district, and the multifamily residential district would become the high density residential district. And then like I mentioned, that R4 residential village district, that's a district for manufactured home parks and tiny homes. Currently, all of our manufactured home parks are zoned as an I1 or maybe I2. Either way, they're zoned as an industrial district. They're residential homes in an industrial district, so that's one of the things that we're correcting in this rewrite is they'll have their own residential district. Then in terms of the commercial and industrial districts, we currently have an institutional campus district. We're proposing for that to be a mixed-use district, which will require a master plan. Places like Hastings College, Mary Lanning, will require them to submit a master plan to us so we know what their plans are for future growth and what they're planning on doing on their campus. Then the commercial office non-retail district and local business district, we're proposing to combine those into just the local business district. So these would be your smaller commercial structures near your residential districts. Then the C2 Central Business District, just renaming that to the Downtown Business District. Commercial Business District would be broken up into two separate districts, the Commercial Corridor District and the Highway Commercial District. The reason we broke that up into two is if you look at the character along Burlington near downtown and along like up to say like 12th or 14th Street. That's a very different commercial character, a lot smaller of lots, generally less parking in comparison to say the North 281. You have Walmart, you have Menards. That's what that highway commercial district would be those larger commercial properties in comparison to down our main Burlington Avenue, that would be your smaller, generally smaller commercial structures. And then I1 and I2 industrial districts, they'll remain as I1 and I2 industrial districts. Yes?
What, I know that one of the things that's been proposed recently is a field house of some sort. What zoning would that need to be? And have you guys, since it is literally part of the comprehensive plan, to do something like that already?
So
where would you have potential locations and things like that?
That would be considered an indoor recreation use, and in the proposed draft that some of you may have a copy of, there's also a copy in there. There's a chart of which uses are allowed in which districts. And so an indoor recreational use, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly which districts that would be allowed in, but generally your commercial and industrial districts.
That is platted, it's gonna be on the other side of Sixth Avenue, between that and Showboat Road. That's where they're putting it.
I haven't heard any details in terms of
As I said,
where that's
in
at.
charge of the project, he's right there.
Not in charge of the project,
Oh,
just
I thought
kind
you
of
were-
organizing
I thought
it,
you were-
to try to get it
There-
off.
There's a man, the mayor should have that.
We're in charge of a committee to try to get it off the ground. For those of you that think I'm in charge of the project, I have nothing to do with the project except for getting people involved to try to get it moving forward.
That's an answer all by itself. Obviously, there's not a location yet.
Oh, there's a location. We've got a meeting next Friday, the 30th or Thursday, the
It
30th,
was in
at
the
6 o'clock
newspaper,
at the
they said you
airport.
have to talk to the stakeholders some more. Sorry, I read the paper every morning.
So,
It's still the formulation phase, and it's so,
Yeah.
it's a new board right now, so.
That's what.
but anybody that's interested to hear about it, come join us at the airport next Thursday at 6 o'clock. 5:30, I think.
So then in terms of the timeline of where
Reach
we're
out and I
at
can give you the
with
exact time.
this zoning rewrite, we've done background research as I shared. We did do public engagement previously. We now have the proposed draft. Now we're in that second box of public engagement. We have our meeting, we'll continue to have meetings. We'd be happy to meet one-on-one. We do really need your input on what we're proposing as well. Like as was mentioned, this is the first draft of this. It's not set in stone. This is everyone's opportunity to talk to us, let us know what you want. Then after we complete the public engagement, complete our draft, it would go to the planning commission for adoption and then the city council for adoption. And that's all I have for you. Thanks for all your questions and for listening to me for a little bit.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Okay.
All that alphabet soup up there, nowhere in there did it say anything about blighted properties. I know there's no conversation on that anywhere, because I've been to every office I can think of to ask. So if they're blighting my property, how come my taxes keep going up?
So the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Authority, is the one that does blighting and tax increment financing. So you were talking about the property north of, I think, 7th Street near Showboat. That was one of the areas that the CRA had gone out and found a consultant to do a blight and substandard study. They look at state statutes. State statute specifies 12 blighted criteria and another 6 substandard criteria. If the area meets it, it then goes to planning commission and council for adoption as a blighted area.
And one of them is if your house is over 40 years old, they can blight the property.
Yes, that's one of the
That's pretty new
criteria.
for houses in Hastings. But you can't have this conversation in any office because they're not cross-compatible with this conversation. I mean, the assessors don't have it. The only one who knows anything about it is Randy Chick.
It does come to our department, Development Services. We write a staff report and then take it to planning commission and council based off of those findings in state statutes. So if you have more questions about it, we'd be happy to sit down with you and answer questions about that as well.
Okay.
I'd add one more thing. Thank you. And if you guys have questions, Kevin's easily accessible and he's not too hard to talk to, so. I mean, you can go visit Kevin anytime you want, Ember anytime you want, I'm sure as well.
Yeah.
I've just always been Kevin's here, so.
Yeah, our office is right behind Menards, 3505 Yost Avenue, or give us a call, that works too, or email as well.
For a couple of more months than here.
Yeah, until we might move into City Hall, in which case we'll be downtown, but for now, we're behind Menards.
I kind of want to put this in a reference. The city of Fremont worked on their zoning code for over 6 years, and they couldn't decide on what they wanted, so they threw something together and adopted it. That's not what we want. We want to make sure the document that we create is a representation of the citizens and the rules and regulations that are passed down from state statutes, that it works for everybody as best as it can. I can't guarantee 100%, but we're trying to do it for everybody in the city of Hastings. And we're putting a lot of work into it.
Thank you.
I don't want to sit and be too close together, you know? I'll spend all day with them, so.
Still liking that.
Can you blame her? Can you blame her?
No, I don't.
She just wants to bounce. Speak between you.
Yeah, no, even my Bible.
Okay, our next slide is, our favorite thing is the budget process. If you have bifocals, you still can't read this. But there is a bigger sheet. It's a schedule that'll be starting here, what was it? In May. Yeah.
Well, we got February.
Right, and it'll be trickling down through, so. I guess last of all, I want to thank Tony Herman for putting this together, Cable Access Channel for coming, Chief Story for playing security guard, I guess, you know, keeping us all in line. Kevin and Ember for showing up, Mayor for showing up, and most of all, you all for showing up. I think Kevin and Amber got a lot of good information tonight. The zoning thing is a process we're going through. And like I said, I just want to thank everyone on behalf of Mike. You want to
Yeah,
throw
thank
anything?
you, thank you very much, and I would just say, keep an eye on the budget, because we've got, you know, we need money, we need to figure out the money, and Monday night, I think we have the restaurant tax on the agenda, so if you have any thoughts on that, you can feel free to email us, call us.
Come to the meeting.
Or come to the meeting. It would be great to have a full house of people at the meeting. But thank you for spending an hour and a half with us here tonight. And again, thank you to Ember for standing up there so long, going through everything. Thank you, Kevin, for answering questions.
Like I said, this is very important to us and to the city, so once again, we're doing our best job to present what we can to you and adjust as we go through the process.
And May 14th is your next
Yes.
meeting, so.
May 14th, library?
Yep.
Does anybody have a question before we? Yes, ma'am?
Yes. The last city council meeting was a little contentious with the planning and zoning thing. Now that you guys have had some time to think about it, and planning and zoning might not have a quorum, would you reconsider your votes, or have you had some time to think about it now that the city might not be able to pass things and grow as we want to? Or what would your answer be to that?
My answer would be that yes, I've had time to think about it, and no, I haven't reconsidered.
I think at the last planning and zoning, what was it, 7-0? Everyone was there. Maybe one person, I think you said, which was
Wouldn't set any personal differences aside to get a planning and zoning thing?
I wouldn't say as a matter of personal differences.
Okay, all right.
I don't have any personal animosity against pretty much anybody. I mean, why?
In fact, I'm glad to see Sean here tonight. Thanks for coming, Sean.
You're welcome. Yeah, and thanks for adding to the conversation. And I want to say again, thank you to all those who are not Ward 1. I mean, we want everybody to come speak, share your thoughts. So, you know, next town hall you hear for Ward 1, everybody's welcome. So let everybody know they're welcome. Yeah, probably.
We'll probably do one, Mike said, in another 3 months or so. We tried to do them quarterly. We took the winter off because we didn't know what the weather was going to be like. And obviously, we could have had,
It's a snow blower way today.
you know. But I also know if we would have planned one, that's what the night we would have had 20 inches of snow.
Well, you should have planned one.
Yeah, I mean, the lake needs it.
Well, if you were going to scoop the snow for us, Mr. Hubbard, we would have.
Okay, so you guys are all released?
I think we're the ones that ought to be released, but yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good evening.
Well, thanks for having us.
Let's go.